The call came in at the worst possible moment, but somehow it still managed to make everything else feel irrelevant. My mother did not greet me, did not ask how I was, did not even pause to breathe. Her voice cut straight through the noise of the kitchen as she told me we needed to talk about tonight, and before I could even respond, she made it clear that I was not invited to my own sister's engagement dinner. I remember standing there in front of the oven, heat pressing against my skin, sweat gathering at my temples, and realizing that after everything I had done for them, I was being erased for the sake of appearances. The kitchen around me was alive with motion. Trays sliding in and out of ovens, mixers humming, the scent of butter and sugar thick in the air. But in that moment, it all faded into the background. My mother's words echoed in my head as she explained that my sister wanted everything to look perfect, that the atmosphere needed to match a certain image, and that I simply did not fit into that vision. She spoke about the way I smelled like yeast and flour, about my rough hands and tired appearance, as if those were flaws instead of proof of everything I had built. I did not argue with her. I did not defend myself. I simply said okay and ended the call, because something inside me had already begun to shift. I stood there long after the line went silent, gripping a tray of freshly baked bread, feeling a strange calm settle over me. It was not sadness, not even anger, but a kind of clarity that made everything else fall into place. People romanticize baking. They imagine it as something soft and comforting, but the truth is far more demanding. It is waking up before the sun rises, working through exhaustion, carrying burns and scars as reminders of the craft. It is discipline, sacrifice, and a level of commitment that most people never see. My sister had never experienced that kind of life, and my parents had never tried to understand it. My sister, Madison, lived in a completely different world. She was known online for her curated lifestyle, for showcasing luxury and perfection to an audience that adored her. Everything about her life was polished, from the lighting in her videos to the clothes she wore, and my parents treated her like she was the embodiment of success. They celebrated her engagement ring, a sparkling symbol of wealth and status, and proudly shared her achievements with anyone who would listen. What they never mentioned was the reality behind it all, the quiet financial support that made her image possible. For years, I had been the one keeping everything afloat. When my father's investments failed, I stepped in without hesitation, sending money every month to cover their expenses. When Madison needed new equipment or wanted to upgrade her content, I paid for it, convincing myself that I was helping her build something meaningful. I believed that my role was to support the family, to stay in the background while they thrived in the spotlight. But standing there in that kitchen, I finally saw the truth. They did not see me as family. They saw me as a resource. The realization did not break me. It freed me. I understood then that what we had was not a relationship built on love or respect, but a transaction that had gone on far too long. And just like any transaction, it could end. The next morning, they walked into my bakery like they owned it. The door swung open with urgency, their expressions tense, their energy frantic. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of what had happened the day before. Instead, they went straight to the problem they needed me to solve. The caterer had canceled, and they needed me to step in immediately. My mother spoke as if it was the most natural thing in the world, as if I would simply drop everything and fix it for them. Madison barely looked at me when she spoke. She was focused on her reflection, adjusting her appearance even in the middle of a crisis. She listed what she needed: dozens of specialty pastries and an elaborate cake, all to be delivered within hours. It was a request that ignored reality, the kind of demand that only someone completely detached from the process could make. I looked at the clock, did the calculations in my head, and knew it was impossible. When I told them I could not do it, the reaction was immediate. Confusion turned into frustration, frustration into anger. They accused me of being selfish, of holding a grudge, of trying to ruin an important moment. My father demanded that I find a way, insisting that I had an obligation to the family. But for the first time, their words did not carry weight. I stood there, calm and steady, and repeated that it could not be done. Then everything changed. The man who walked into the bakery did not belong to their world of appearances and shallow expectations. He carried himself with quiet authority, his presence commanding attention without effort. Madison rushed toward him, expecting affection, expecting validation, but he moved past her without hesitation. His focus was entirely on me. When he spoke, there was respect in his voice, a genuine appreciation that I had never heard from my own family. He introduced himself as Daniel Carter, the owner of a global hotel chain, and explained that he had been trying to reach me for months. He spoke about my work, about the reputation my bakery had built, about the impact it had on his business. Every word he said contradicted the narrative my family had created, every detail exposing the truth they had ignored. The confusion in the room was almost tangible. Madison could not understand why he was speaking to me like that, why he valued something she had dismissed. My parents looked stunned, their expressions shifting as they tried to process what was happening. And when Daniel asked why I had never responded to his emails, the final piece of the puzzle fell into place. I had never received them because they had been intercepted. The realization hit hard, but it did not surprise me as much as it should have. My father had access to the system, and he had used it to control what opportunities reached me. When confronted, he tried to justify his actions, claiming that he was protecting me, that he was keeping the family together. But his words sounded hollow, even to him. Daniel's reaction was sharp and unforgiving. He saw through the excuses immediately, recognizing the manipulation for what it was, and in that moment, the balance of power shifted completely. Madison tried to regain control, to redirect the conversation back to her needs, but it was too late. The illusion had shattered, and there was no way to rebuild it. Her frustration boiled over into anger, her words laced with bitterness as she lashed out at me. She accused me of jealousy, of sabotage, of trying to destroy her happiness, but I did not respond. I did not need to. Silence can be more powerful than any argument, and I let hers fill the room until it became unbearable. Then, with deliberate calm, I removed my apron, folded it neatly, and placed it on the counter. I took the key she had used to enter my space without permission and set it down beside it. And finally, I picked up my phone and cut the last remaining ties. When I walked out of that bakery, I was not running away. I was stepping into something new. The consequences came quickly, but they did not affect me the way they affected them. Madison's carefully constructed image began to crumble without the financial support she had relied on. My parents were forced to face the reality of their situation, no longer shielded by my contributions. And Daniel, true to his word, offered me an opportunity that changed everything. A year later, I stood in front of a new storefront in Tokyo, the culmination of everything I had worked for. It was not just a business. It was a statement, a declaration that my value did not depend on anyone else's approval. The people around me that day were there because they believed in what I had built, not because they expected something from me. As I took my first bite of a fresh pastry in that new space, I realized something simple but powerful. Freedom does not come from proving others wrong. It comes from finally choosing yourself,